Um, I don't really know where to start with being a remote worker because a lot of what I've learned in the past 12 months has been accidental. And I'll explain. One day in March last year, when the pandemic started the numbers started to rise in South Africa and Cape Town. I actually learned that yesterday was our 1 year anniversary of going remote as a company because we did that long before Cyril announced um, the lockdown. So going into it was really by accident, and that we can sit and chat about it a year later about what has worked and what hasn't worked, what have been the struggles, how has the journey been like, and I suppose what can we learn from it going into the future, and what are some of the strategies, for remote work? How what can you learn? What transferable skills can you learn from it? So I think a lot of the things I'll speak about today will come from my experience. Into being thrown in the deep end when it comes to remote work, instead of waking up in the morning as one would have a year ago and going to the office, preparing yourself, going to the office, taking a commute. Um, all of a sudden, that couldn't happen anymore, and our houses and our homes became our offices and places that we function from or we work from, right? So it's no longer home sweet home, it is home sweet office. Or not so sweet office, because the lines have become really blurred. So I work for an organization in Cape Town called Outsourced CFO. We're an accounting practice, an accounting and advisory practice, and I think I've got some of my colleagues on here. So when I explain what I do, I say I do the fun stuff. I think of myself as an air traffic controller, but for an accounting firm. So I'm kind of at the key and the heart of everything, and that really energizes me. And if you can tell already, I am an extrovert. And waking up one day and not being able to see people, to have those water cooler conversations, and to walk down through company gardens with my team member, was kind of a lot to learn or being thrown into at first. So I want to talk about how that journey started out, and I wanted to explain it to you with an example. So I was talking to my colleague this morning, and I thought this would be a great example to explain what happened. A few years ago, 12 to be exact, without giving my age, a few years ago, my dad was going to teach me how to drive. So he set out on a Sunday afternoon and got into the car, gave me the basics, and we were driving out of the driveway, and I had to make a right turn. So as I make a right turn, the door flung open. It was one of those cars that didn't tell you that the door is not closed, right? So the door flung open. And as a rookie, my first instinct was to let go of the steering wheel, foot off the pedals, and try and close the door. So you can imagine that was catastrophic. Would have hit a tree, but my dad controlled the vehicle. So when we started out with remote working, it was a lot like that. We didn't know the tools, we didn't know the ins and outs of remote working. There's some habits that we picked up that don't quite work. There's some habits that we picked up that actually really work and help us to navigate the remote working setting. And when I think about remote working and how I ended up doing it, it's a lot like that. Starting out where you don't know what to start. So I started out being very excited. I was like, yes, let's do this. Set up my remote workstation, got a desk, got a chair from the office. Monday morning, I think we went remote on a Wednesday. So Thursday morning, the next day, sit at my desk. Okay, same routine. I was like, okay, do I dress up? Do I not dress up? I'm actually not sure. So we got a whole remote work policy written out for us. You must always wear formal, maintain the dress code. First few days, that worked. A couple of days later, PJ bottoms, smart casual, smart at the top, casual at the bottom. That works. I mean, it works for me. So I think a couple of weeks ago, someone said, who's most likely to be wearing pajamas? I'm like, what is wrong with that? What is wrong with that? But that has become the future. That has become our current and the future. So the point that I'm trying to drive here is a lot of us found ourselves in remote working by accident. A lot of the things we've learned them on the job. It was one huge experiment, and we actually had to make do. We had to learn a lot of these things. A survey was done where people were asked, what are some of the worst things about working from home? Exciting as it may be, there's a dark side to it. What are some of the things people call the worst things about working from home? Social isolation. I think when we talk about working from home in this instance, we cannot miss the fact that we are actually going through a pandemic. And as the Twitter folk will call it, a panorama, a panini. We are going through the most, right? So it's not remote working as it would be under normal circumstances. We've been going through a lot. And a part of it, social isolation, was a point where we went from meeting people to being at home by yourself. With the full lockdown, a lot of it was about 3 weeks where we couldn't go out, we couldn't see people. It was an ultimate change, but you were also still then required to still be at work every single day, worried about your health, worried about being exposed to the virus, but still being at work. So that kind of hangs at the back of our heads when we think about remote working and not being hard on ourselves, because this was abnormal circumstances. So this is not exactly, the greatest circumstances to be working from home and to be positive about most things, but we're glad that we can still smile about it a year later and still talk about the things we've learned. So social isolation was a big thing, and for me particularly, because I'm an extrovert. For introverts, they were having a great time. Extroverts were not okay. It took about 4 weeks where the whole I'm excited, my whole energy went down, and I was like, oh my God, I'm alone. This is annoying. When is this going to end? And I thought Cyril was going to take 21 days. No. I don't know why I believed that. I wasn't actually watching what was happening in the world. I mean, Italy had been in lockdown for 3 weeks by the time we went into lockdown. So that is one of the worst things about working from home. Finding balance, that is a big one. When a lot of people are asked to say they don't find the balance, either you're putting in too much work because there's nothing else to do. We're stuck in our houses. You're putting in too much work. You don't have boundaries. The lines have blurred between home time and work time and leisure time and social time. I mean, we're at work. We're literally just staying at work. That's how it feels. Some people said lack of support. So the third big thing was, a lot of people say there is lack of colleague support. I know I have some of my colleagues here who also started a new job during lockdown and started a new job during remote working. You don't know anyone. When you had walked into an office of 25, you would have the privilege of taking social cues and seeing who you can actually speak to, who am I comfortable with. But starting a new job remotely is also hard because you're sitting at your computer, busy onboarding. You don't know who on the screen you can actually speak to, pick up the phone and speak to. I like to extend myself most of the time, being the extrovert that I am. I pick up the phone and say, how you doing? Because that is my character. That is what I do. Another big thing, the fourth thing, is distractions. So you get really distracted. If you are like me, you would get distracted a lot. I don't know how you guys are encountering that and how you face it. But a lot of people are finding themselves getting distracted. And the biggest enemy for work or work from home is multitasking. I'll say this: multitasking is a scam. If you start on 10 things at the same time, it never works out. For me, it never really works out because you get there and you've done parts of 10 things and none of them is finished. And if you're working in a team and you've got people who are relying on you to complete tasks before they can start their own tasks, then you get to a point where your team members start to not be able to rely on you because you're always pushing deadlines, you're not meeting the targets. So that's one thing to I would say worry about when you're distracted, because it has consequences on other people's work. The fifth thing that people spoke about is IT issues, maybe setting up or not having internet. And I understand there is a lot of load shedding going on in Cape Town at the moment. So those issues and understanding, okay, so if if I can't work in the 2 hours, when do I account for that time? It's now getting into my personal time. Do I still have to work it in or not? Or do I just work harder tomorrow when I don't have, when I don't have power? Lack of structure. I think lack of structure also goes along with balance. We'll touch on it when we talk about the habits or some of the things that have helped me um, to move from drowning when we talk about remote work to being able to actually pedal fast and swim really fast when it comes to remote working. The seventh thing, which I relate less to than all of the other things, is boredom. People are reporting that when they work from home, they get bored. I don't know about you. Are you getting bored? You can type it in. Are you getting bored? If you're getting bored, then there are a lot of questions you need to ask about. One other thing that I learned through the lockdown is that our roles changed. So some of the things that we were doing when we were together in the office became redundant. So that's an opportunity to speak to your supervisor when you've got time open, to speak to your colleagues, learn a new skill, see how you can use some of that open time productively. Yeah, I would say that's my advice that I would give. So what are some of the things that I have learned that have helped me thrive through this journey? And a lot of it speaks to the points that I've spoken about before. Having a routine. When I started out, I didn't have a routine. At first, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do wake up in the morning. Oh, now that I'm at home and I can actually get to do coffee or wake up late, and then all of a sudden I'm running out of time. I'm running late for my meetings, and I start to panic. So if I start my day in the morning late because I thought, okay, let me sleep in, I'm gonna wake up and realize, oh gosh, I have a 9 o'clock meeting, and then now I'm rushing, and that already sets the tone for my day. So what I've learned to do, or one of the strategies that I've employed, is having a routine. So for me, I've learned to say to myself, work hours are work hours. So if I'm an 8 to 5, and I'll give you an example now because now I've moved to the UK and South Africa is 2 hours behind me, ahead of me rather. 8 o'clock here, 8 o'clock in South Africa is 6 a.m. to me. So I've also worked around not having meetings at that time because it's not going to work. 6 a.m. in the morning, I'm grumpy. And yeah, we're not just going to have a great experience of meetings at that time, which I'm grateful because my team members and my employers also are also understanding of the difference in time zone. But the point I was getting at is that work hours are work hours. The time that I've set to work, I will sit and do the work in the time. Um, that means that I allow myself also to take visible lunch and breaks. When we worked at the office, it was easy to know what time work starts. If you started at 8 o'clock, you would walk in through the door 5 minutes before or 10 minutes before. And at 8 o'clock, you're sitting at your desk, coffee at your hand, and you're ready to start. What I've found for me is keeping that kind of routine helps my brain. So I'm hacking my brain because what I learned at first is, oh, let me just sleep in. And then before I know it, I'm rushing, I'm unprepared for meetings, I'm not ready. And that just kind of escalates to a place where, when you have your first meeting for the day and you're not ready and you get a negative comment and it influences how you feel the rest of the day. So I decided I'm going to keep my 8 to 5 because then my brain knows 8 to 5, I'm sitting at the desk, I'm actually working. There were times when I wasn't taking lunch because it's also easy to just keep on working, right? Because there is no set times. When we were at the office, it was easy to know that it was lunchtime because everyone's just getting up from their desk. At OCFO, we love to go to Food Lovers. So at 12 or 12:30, people are getting up, going to the office, taking a proper visible lunch. That has been difficult during working from home. I don't know how you experienced it, but I just found it hard to take a lunch break. We have our phones and our computers, and the phone doesn't stop ringing. And sometimes, because we're taking lunch at different times, some of my team members don't know when I'm taking lunch. So I'm busy trying to fix myself a sandwich, and someone calls me, and I'm going to leave that and pick up the phone. So one of the tools I use for myself, and I think we use it in the rest of the team, is just putting it in the calendar. And if you call me, if it is my lunchtime, I'm just not going to pick it up. It's a boundary that I've learned to set. I will call you back. I'm just not going to stop what I'm doing, and pick up the phone, because before you know it, nothing takes 5 minutes. Before you know it, you're stuck in an email, there's a crisis at work, and you haven't actually finished making your food, and you haven't eaten, and you haven't given your brain that break that it needs to be focused again. Okay. At first, when I was making my rookie mistakes with working from home, is I was putting in more hours than what was required. There is nothing wrong with putting in more hours than what was required. But when you do it continuously and throwing time to a problem, so let's say you have a big issue at work and you just keep on throwing time to it, it works against you in the long run. Around about July last year, I got to a point where, because I was throwing myself into work, I was spending more time because there was nothing else to do. I would just, okay, fine, 5 o'clock, let me just do a little bit more, a little bit more. And before I know it, it's 7 o'clock. Then I get up and I eat, and maybe I'll work on something until like 8 o'clock. What that ended up doing is I actually got sick. I got sick because I kept on working and I never gave myself enough time to actually rest, which is a big pillar for working from home. Just having those boundaries and allowing yourself to rest. Um, Another thing I've learned is to be organized. I don't know how you like to work. I like having a to-do list. And if I can manage myself by having a to-do list before the start of the day, okay, these are the 10 things. I know sometimes there's always scope creep, that things keep moving. But by having a to-do list, I tell my brain that, okay, you've got 5 things to do. And then I organize those things. There's a saying that I like that says, you have to start with the frog. And there are days when I want to start with the biggest, hardest task, because once I get that task out of the way, I can get to do the smaller things. Then there are days when I want to start with the smallest tasks, because I need the small wins. Once I get 2, 3 small wins, I can tackle the big things. So, what I call that is understanding how you work. Okay. How do you work? What works for you? What doesn't work for you? What works for me is I'm a morning person. So, what works for me is getting my energy levels up in the morning, focusing on, planning my day out. I leave my most, let's say, uninspiring tasks. I leave my most uninspiring tasks for between 3 and 5 o'clock in the day. Why do I do that? Because between 3 and 5, I can answer an email without thinking too hard. I can't reserve the hardest work that I have for 3 to 5, because then my energy levels are starting to fall. I'm not operating at my optimal. So I think what I would encourage each one here on this call is to understand how you work. When you understand how you work, then you can hack your energy. You can hack your productivity. Then you'll know, okay, fine. If I'm most energetic in the morning, let's get it done in the morning. If you're most energetic during midday, into the afternoon and late into the afternoon, then you need to know by now, okay, fine, this has not worked. I'm not going to do it. I'm not so much of a morning person. I know there are some people who are in the 5:30 a.m. club. Is it 5 o'clock? 5:30. I think it's the 5 a.m. club. They swear by it. They're up by 5 o'clock. They've taken a shower. They've started to plan the day. I'm not that person. I think my brain wakes up around 8:30 to 9 o'clock in the morning. So I know between 8 and 12, that's my best time. I don't like to have meetings in that time. If you can control it, I'm privileged that I can control the times that I can have my meetings. Then I like to have my meetings at a certain time and not at a certain time so that I allow myself to do deep work at certain times. One of the things we also implemented at work was no meeting Wednesday. So what happened is that we got really trigger happy. Everyone was like, we're doing this, we're working remotely. Before you knew it, we're replacing all the meetings we had in the office with even more meetings in the calendar. There were days when you would have like 3, 4, 5 meetings. I don't know about you, but I was having too many meetings to an extent that you feel really zoomed out. At the end of the day, you are finished, you are crushed, you can't do this anymore. Then later on, we realized, okay, fine, guys, what are we going to do? We have too many meetings. I'm spending too many meetings. And I don't know about you, I don't quite enjoy many meetings. And some of the meetings could really have been emails. So what do we do now? We implement a policy where Wednesdays are no meeting days. So figure out a time where you don't schedule things so that you can actually do the deep work on your to-do list, and crush those hard deadlines that you have. Yeah. And then this one I'm really guilty of. I would say it's a habit that I am still working on, is shutting it down. Shutting down that computer. If you're working 8 to 5, 5 o'clock, you shut it down. Take it away, remove it from your space. I work from our dining area, which means that I see my computer every single day, even on the weekends. So what I've learned to do now is pack it away. So once I'm done with work, I'll pick away my computer. I have a second screen. I will remove the second screen from the table and put it down under the table, so I don't see it. I allow my brain to to not get into work, right? To not get into work, to not get into the habit of just continuously going on with work. Or when I can't find a nice program on TV, then just okay, let me just respond to an email. Before I know it, there's 10 emails. That doesn't work. It hasn't worked for me. I wouldn't imagine it working for anyone. Yeah, but I'm open to hearing how it's worked out for you. And then socializing with your colleagues. I've had to be intentional. At first, we started I think we called it the buddy system. We had buddies. You were assigned to someone who would chat you up, someone who would check how you're doing socially, because it was actually really a hard time. I think lockdown level 5 and 4 were quite hectic. So we had to be intentional about that. And then after a while, we didn't have like a buddy. But in the office with your team members, there would be someone you can chat to. So schedule a time where you socialize. Back in the office, we could actually just have what they call water cooler conversations, right? Or conversations by the coffee machine or in the kitchen. That isn't there anymore. So if you can schedule a call to socialize and talk about other things other than work, sometimes it may end up being rant sessions, whatever it is that you need to talk to your colleague about. But make time for that, because we're in this space where we think we're continuously working, we're not making time to actually socialize with our colleagues and make friends. I can imagine how hard it must be to start a new job in a remote working session and you don't know who to talk to. So pick up the phone like we would in the office, just chat up to someone. Last point that I have about what has helped me to thrive while I'm working remotely is asking for help. So I've learned that when I feel overwhelmed and when I feel that the pressure is too much, I've learned to speak to my supervisor, to my boss, see if I can, delegate some of the stuff that I do, see if I can get help from the stuff that I do. I know a couple of times when my boss picked up my slack to help me. but only because I had asked for the help. So I know, I think not to wait for an emergency when a deadline is due in an hour to say, guys, I can't do this. But to be intentional and be able to communicate that in a way that people can actually know how to help you. We wouldn't, I think, we can't do justice to working remotely if we don't talk about mental health and um, how to tackle it when you are having a hard time at work. I had one of those periods last year where it was just not working out for me. And the worst thing about being anxious or having I think experiencing mental health, a breakdown of some sort, or just having issues, is that it just keeps getting worse if it isn't addressed. So I've learned to know the triggers for myself. When I start to feel like overwhelmed, I've learned to, at the first sign of being overwhelmed, to do those self-care routines, okay, and to have a little conversation with myself and understand. Sometimes I have to stop and understand, why am I feeling like this? Do I need to speak to someone? If I have to speak to someone, then I will pick up the phone and speak to someone. It goes to asking for help, but also just speaking to someone. There are many times when I was feeling anxious or when I was feeling overwhelmed, that just speaking to someone helped me to understand what it is or what aspect of my life was making me feel anxious, and then be able to tackle that aspect of my life that is making me feel anxious, and take a break from it all. I have a friend of mine, um, she's on the call today, and she always likes to say, take a break from it. Take a break, like take leave days. A lot of people didn't take their leave days last year because there was nowhere to go to, but you need those leave days. At work, we have what they call now a mental health day. There's a day when you wake up and you know this is not going to happen. It's because you're cutting yourself and other people some slack. You know yourself that this is not going to happen. Instead of soldiering on and acting like a superhero, which helps no one because your body will shut down. Just allowing yourself that grace, that that grace to know that, okay, this is not going to work. My body is not cooperating with me today. Let's take leave. Obviously, there are issues with that, would be not with a big deadline, because also I know how it is with mental health. Of course, you can't schedule it, but by being able to know when it is coming, you can also manage other people's expectations, so that at the end of the day you can take the time you need, but also be able to, yeah, move those deliverables to other people. All right, looking ahead into the future, what skills are we going to need to be able to succeed with remote work? I think remote work is here to stay. Um, Going into the future, I think there will be hybrids, flexi work, of how people are going to be working. Some people may continue remote work indefinitely. I think at outsource CFO, we are actually continuing remote work indefinitely. There's no set date for going to the office. I think at the moment we've got a couple of people sitting everywhere. Some of the people are not even in the Western Cape province, and they just started work and with no intention of coming back to the office or coming into the office. So remote work is here to stay. And just like how I explained my story about driving and how I learned to drive, then you're going to need the skills for you to be able to work remotely. Um, and our remote, given that our remote working experiences are not the same, some people are finding it harder to work remotely. But I think the important thing is to identify and know yourself. Like the points that I've said before, like to be organized, have a list, shut it down when you need to, socialize when you have to, understand your energy and your productivity. At what time do you work best? The skills that you're going to need into the future is a strong written communication skills. A lot of the times things keep going back and forth, which can be frustrating because people are just not communicating well. A person who's going to thrive working remotely has to be able to communicate well. I don't know if you use this tool. There's a tool called Loom videos, right? I find it great. You should check it out. I find it great that you can actually do a short video to explain what it is that you're talking to. We're getting to a point where we can do how-to videos, not just to our team members, but also how-to videos to our clients. So instead of writing a long email or getting it wrong 5 times and the client's asking this and then you're asking that, if you could do a Loom video to the client and explain what it is that you need, I think in about 5 minutes, you should be able to do a video, record your screen and show um, what it is that you're trying to explain to the client. Time management skills are going to be really important. I think we talked about having a structure to your day. Just structuring your day. You know yourself, you know the things that you have to get done during the day. There are people who have to pick kids up from school, right? And they know what time they have to pick kids up from school. To organize your work life around the things that you need to do, and to be able to still deliver to your team their expectations of you. So that's going to be really important. And deep work, the ability to self-regulate and focus. So it's not every day that you're going to wake up and it's all hunky-dory. I'm ready to work. I'm fired up. Some days are going to be hard. And for me, I can relate to it. There are some days when I'm just sleeping in bed and I'm like, oh, do I have to do this? There will be days like that. But the ability to self-regulate is to know your circumstances. Give yourself grace. Take a mental day when you have to. And when you come to work, or when you come to your desk where you sit and you work from, to be present in the moment. And when you're disappointed, about things not working out the way you're expecting them to work out, or when you get negative feedback so early in the morning, to be able to adapt and refocus your energy and just continue with what you were doing, right? So the ability to self-regulate and focus, because we did say a lot of the people were finding it hard because of the distractions. You get really distracted when you're working from home. I've tried working from home and cooking at the same time. I can report that it hasn't worked for me, because I work with 2 screens. So I'm trying to work on this screen and that screen, and then trying to get up and make something to eat at the same time. I would rather just finish the task. I'm an advocate for multitasking is a scam, because for the longest time in my life I thought that I was doing myself a favor. I thought I could do many things at the same time. Then I realized that I'm actually depleting my energy by doing a lot of things at the same time. I should do just this one thing, finish it. It will probably take me less time to finish one thing at a time than if I try to do all the things that I need to do in the house. The I think the trap is always to be like, because I'm being a woman and being the person that I am, sometimes I'm getting up and think, oh, if I could just do those dishes quickly, and then if I could just do that quickly, and then I see something that is out of space, out of place, if I could just do laundry quickly. I mean, you can find time in the day, but just allow yourself to not exhaust yourself. Because when you do a lot of things at the same time, it actually adds to the feeling of being exhausted and that feeling of being too busy. Another skill that's going to be critical for remote work is adaptability, the ability to actually adapt to the environment that you are in, and to, as we spoke about before, self-regulate. A lot of people will ask questions about, I will give you a valid example with especially coming into the first world with the UK. A lot of work is remote work. They are a couple of steps ahead of us. And by us, I mean by South Africa and Africa. There are a couple of steps ahead of us. A lot of the companies have actually made remote work possible. So they don't intend to go back to the office. I know a couple of companies in South Africa that also don't intend to go into the office. So your ability to self-regulate, manage your time, communicate well, adapt to your environment is going to be critical in the next role that you will get. So there is no doubt, possibly, the next role that you're going to get is going to be a remote job, possibly. And a lot of the recruiters then will get to a point where they ask you, how have you found working from home? And you can't lie how you found working from home, because then you're being expected to keep in the same kind of lie. So the sooner you learn the skills, the sooner you see what works and what doesn't work for you, the earlier, yeah, I suppose, then to throw away the bad habits, and to be able to thrive. I think I've spoken for a long time. I didn't say before that I was going to take questions, but I will just go through see if, I think maybe you have to raise your hand if you've got a question. I think I've come to the end of what I was going to share with you, the strategies, and the opportunities, to speak about opportunities. A lot of countries, first world countries, are actually looking for affordable labor, right? And we've known this and seen this before, where some roles are becoming available to Africa, right? You can still apply for a job that's in the UK and that requires you to work remotely. You can still apply to companies in the US with a different time zone altogether, who are expecting you to work remotely while you're sitting in South Africa. And I think that by learning these skills and by understanding how you work as a remote worker, and to be fair, remote working is probably not for everyone. If some people had a choice, they would rather go to the office, keep with the office routine. But if you are actively thinking about continuing as a remote worker, and I'm not sure how we're doing with the vaccine, but we probably could be working, if you're working from home now, you probably could be working from home for another 6 months or so. And I know that Italy has gone back into lockdown. So if we are unlucky and COVID-19 isn't done with us, it's probably for another 12 months, which I hope not, but not to alarm you or anything. But if this is here to stay, then it is in your best interest to learn how you work remotely, how you can work better. Okay, am I missing any questions?
Yeah, so Leanne, before I ask everyone, it's more of a statement that I have, and then I'll ask maybe a few who put in the chat box if they're willing to just talk about their question a bit more.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really liked what you shared in the beginning in terms of the strategies, because it sounds like you really focused on the time component.
Mhm.
And the part that you mentioned, asking for help, I've also experienced that myself. And I really do think that whatever was happening in the office environment obviously got amplified in the remote work environment. And if nothing else, just sort of look at, instead of trying to do more in less time,
Mhm.
or more in more time, rather look at where is the best opportunity to either for yourself to develop in other areas, or to, like I said, delegate to your team members, and just have that conversation with the person, with the team that you're working with. Because I think that often we try and do more in more time, or more in less time, like you said.
Mhm.
And I think that time component is such a good point that you made in terms of what you're not willing to sacrifice, right? So I think, and that takes me to Lorraine. I think, Lorraine, if you're willing to speak and if you're still on the call, she had a comment about not taking breaks, and being exhausted, and I think you spoke a lot about that as well. I think she's not on the call anymore, unless I missed her.
I can see her question. I think I'll just answer the question,
Mm.
so long. I fall into that trap very easily, the trap of not taking breaks. And then I realized that I was not doing anyone a favor by not taking a break, right? So I've learned now to block out that time. Block out that time. It doesn't have to be an hour, even 45 minutes. And one thing that has helped now is taking a walk or scheduling an activity, a personal activity for that time. So then that will allow you to disassociate from work and then come back into the work environment, with kind of like a fresh mind, whatever that works for you. If you're going to walk down the road, just go outside, go get a fresh breath of air. You are no good when you're not rested. And then she spoke about getting exhausted during the week. I don't know about you, hey, I'm getting really exhausted. I look forward to the weekend. I'm like, I cannot wait for the weekend. I think it's an accum- I would say it's an accumulation of things because of the environment that we are in. But if you pace yourself and if you ring fence those work hours, I haven't been able to quite get that right because I think as a woman, as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to shut down my computer, give myself 30 minutes, and the next thing I'm thinking about what am I making for dinner and all of that. So it has always felt as if there's a cycle and there's no real break. One thing that I would recommend is I've tried to do it. It's just that because it has been really winter here and we haven't been able to go out very often, is to do an after work activity in your personal life. So, what is it that you can do after work to kind of disassociate your mind from it's no longer work? And some of the things that help you feel energized is actually exercise. I'm trying to get into the bandwagon of exercise. One would actually think if I exercise, then I'm actually wasting time and I'm going to feel tired. Those that actually exercise will tell you that you actually don't feel tired when you exercise. You feel refreshed. Your brain is working at maximum capacity. So try and have an after work routine. Do something after work. Do something for yourself, even if it's just reading a book or going for a long bath. Something that helps you disassociate and remind your brain that we are out of work now. We're not at work now. We're entering into a different social setting. I would say that's what I would recommend.
Well, Nini, so thanks again.
Great, thank you. I think you guys can always reach me on LinkedIn and on my socials. I try and talk about. I think I've become quite passionate, and when I think about the future, I don't see myself going back to the office. I mean, it's in South Africa, but in my career, I don't see myself ever going back to an office full time. This is actually quite comfortable, and I'm enjoying it.